So I just went back to Chapel Hill in Durham for the first time in a bunch of years this past week for Isaac to see the great-grandparents who are still alive, my grandfather who is shortly to turn 103, my grandmother at 98, and my other grandfather he's about to be 93. He's the young one. My mom told me you're not going to recognize it. And she was right. I don't know who here spent time in Chapel Hill anytime recently, but I was struck by the ways in which I could not recognize it and could not navigate the very streets where I grew up. And this was in large part because of the high-rises, and the high-rises that were 3 stories, 5 stories, what have you, with housing for people, with stores, all of this stuff. But what I didn't take into account was that it was going to alter my ability to see the topography around it and fundamentally change what it looked like, such that it wasn't just different, it was unrecognizable, in fact. Which is an interesting thing, to go to a place that you grew up in and spent 20 years, your formative years and whatnot, and not have it be recognizable on many levels. This also brings me to the Torah portion, Rabbi. There's this interesting piece where it talks about places of worship. It says, and I'm in chapter 12, you didn't get to hear this, but look, bonus, more Torah today. We love that. Chapter 12, verse 2, you must destroy all the sites at which the nations you are to dispossess worshipped their gods, whether on lofty mountains and on hills, or under any luxuriant tree. Tear down the altar, smash the pillars, put the sacred posts to fire, cut down the images of their gods, obliterating their name from that very site. Harsh, right? I was thinking about that injunction to destroy those places. Has anybody here spent any time in Turkey, Istanbul in particular? I see a few heads nodding, Istanbul. You ever go on the tour of the Hagia Sophia, the mosque there? If you go on that tour and you have some tour guide telling you about the thing, at least this is what they did for me back in 2005. I did study abroad in Turkey when I was in college. They told me that when the Muslims would lose these buildings to the Christians, or the Christians would lose them back to the Muslims during the Crusades and the whole back and forth and whatever, they wouldn't tear down the building. At the towers, the little spires, all the way at the very top, there would be a little cross, and the Muslims would come in, chop off the little cross, put a little crescent up there, a little crescent moon, and hey, good as new, look at that, we'll just keep worshiping in the very same building. And then the Christians would come back, chop off the crescent moon, little cross goes back on top, same building.
And the Viking graffiti was there the whole time.
And the Viking graffiti persisted through the entirety of this changing of hands. Thank you. You're not wrong. And so it makes me think about the nature of this change that we see in the Torah portion. Clearly, the Deuteronomist was not content with chopping off the little religious symbol at the top of the pre-Israelite of the Canaanite gods or whatever and sticking, I don't know, a Magen David or something like that up at the top. And great, it's a beautiful little place. It's a lovely building. It's a great place for worshiping. Whatever it is you're going to worship, let's chop off the little sign at the front, put ours up top, and we'll just reuse it. We'll repurpose it. Can you repurpose it? Can you actually fully repurpose it? Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's substantially different with the altar on top of the hill compared to the Hagia Sophia. Like, if you have some little altar versus monumental architecture, that's a very different...
Okay.
I feel like it's a lot harder to repurpose the little thing, and it's also a lot less destructive to knock down the little thing than this massive building that is the biggest thing in town and has been for 500 years.
Cool. So maybe it's utilitarian. The Hagia Sophia is this beautiful, grand, incredible place You wouldn't want to chop that down. That'd be very labor intensive to have to deal with or whatever. But somebody's little altar on the hilltop, whatever, we'll toss it in the fire. It's no biggie, right? So maybe there's a pure utility to it. Alan.
Also, in the Torah, we were having some trouble speaking with the practices that we were being taught.
Ah.
And so leaving those structures in place, we might be tempted to revert to those practices.
So Alan brings up a very important point. In my little Crusades metaphor for the thing, when the Muslims come to town and chop off the little cross on top, there's not a big concern about all of the Muslims suddenly deciding that they're going to be Christian. Their forces came in, they pushed out the other guy, and now it's their site. Alan points out correctly that the dynamic here is a little bit different. Remember what we were saying about the imperative of the Deuteronomist? What's that dude's agenda? Probably was a dude, so I'll say that. What was his agenda? Well, he's concerned about the Israelites becoming pagan, worshiping other gods and whatnot, the seductive quality of these other sites and places and things and whatnot in the surrounding area, that perhaps if you don't change the site changes you. That's a different paradigm. Another metaphor about place and repurposing it. Memory, really. Has anyone here been to the concentration camp outside of Berlin called Sachsenhausen? A couple of you have. All right, cool. So it is, for those of you who have visited Nazi concentration camps, it is a concentration camp. What is striking to me about it is the way that some of the surrounding space gets repurposed. Not the camp itself, but what was surrounding the camp was a huge SS barracks and complex. The Nazi regime fell, and who took over then? Communists. Communists came in, and they made Sachsenhausen a memorial for all of the communists who were persecuted under Nazi Germany, fine. But they just took that working SS barracks and said, actually, this is a perfectly usable site. We're going to make it into, what was that?
Housing.
Housing. Well, more specifically, a police barracks for the Stasi, the East German secret police. They went from one secret police organization to another one. Then communism fell. You had the unification of Germany. And this is the part that really tripped me out when I was walking up to Sachsenhausen. You walk along this long road up to the front gates of it. On the other side of the fence are all of the German federal police going to work first thing in the morning at the police barracks, which is the exact same police barracks that's just been repurposed and repurposed and then repurposed again. It's for federal police in all three of those different scenarios, but under those different regimes. But there wasn't a sense of this needs to get torn down and repurposed and made into something else. We can't possibly use the space. Every group that came in looked at that, said, well, we can use that. So in many ways, to me, the most poignant thing about going to Sachsenhausen and the concentration camp was not actually going to the concentration camp. It was the walk up the road to the concentration camp where one walked alongside the federal police going to work in the morning. That was the most striking part of it to me.
In the Nazi headquarters.
In what was the Nazi headquarters, what was an SS barracks that became an East German communist secret police barracks that is now a federal police headquarters. And so you walk up your side of the road to sacred memory on this side, and they walk up to the site being what the site's always been on the other side of the fence. I think, to me, I really struggled with that. It felt like, shouldn't that be a memorial? Shouldn't that actually be lifted up in space and time to be something a little bit different other than the normal thing? Should it as an SS barracks not be so pedestrian as to be somebody's workplace? But I was thinking about what Alan said, which is this question of, do you change the place or does the place change you? If that's my yardstick, well, then I can breathe a little bit deeper with the German federal police going to work in the morning, because I think they have in fact changed that site. What intentionality it is that they bring in their police work is without a doubt different than that of the SS, the Stasi, whoever. They've shown up and they've changed the place. They didn't show up that I know of and let the place change them. So that's what I'm sitting with here, with this element from Parshat Re'eh. Are there places that you can change and places that change you through your visiting to them and of them and being within them and around them? What was striking to me about going back to North Carolina was the way in which it had a power to transform me, to bring me back 30 years to being a kid there and growing up there again. But that was only in memory. It just brought up memory. It put me back in that place, but the extent to which it could meet me where I am right now was limited. It's another strip mall with another Lowe's. And they have a Cava too, if you like that Mediterranean place that's just over the state line on 202. Yes, they have one of those as well. Ein kol chadash tachat hashemesh, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. And so what I was struck by was the idea that it could evoke memory for me, and it could bring up what it felt like to be in this place, but it didn't stake a claim on my future. It didn't stake a claim on who I am today and who I'm becoming. It couldn't speak to that. All it could do was evoke memory and evoke what was and what has been and what have you. And maybe that's has a certain kind of effect on me. But it wasn't the kind of place that I can find where it is I'm going forward in the world. I mean, that's here. It's with you all. It's in Wilmington, Delaware. It's this set of realities. It's a different thing from that standpoint. And so it has a different authority. And it makes me think about how it is that we venerate sites and places and make them sacred. I have droshed on this a little bit before, but I'm going to bring it back again just in brief as we think about these sites and destroying the sites of worshiping those gods. There's been an awful lot of contemporary struggle and fight about memory right now. In particular, I am thinking about political figures who are saying that some of the places in which our country does memory of different sorts ought not be so sad or dark or such a downer or what have you, that we ought to define memory differently. And I'm struck by that in contrast to, I don't know, it was probably 10 years ago, just about by now. There was a statue in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, called Silent Sam. Anybody know about Silent Sam? Confederate soldier. See, Steve is nodding. Steve, yeah, you spent some quality time in Chapel Hill, yeah. And I remember about 10 years ago, there was this whole big to-do and controversy about what to do with the statue of Silent Sam. Do you venerate a Confederate soldier in this day and age and moment? And the Chancellor of Carolina at the time made the decision that they were going to take down Silent Sam and put Silent Sam in a museum. That they were going to have an actual place that was going to do very specific history and memory around those from the University of North Carolina who participated in the Confederacy, but that it wasn't going to be out in the middle of all things, this monolith to be celebrated in that way. In other words, that Chancellor of Carolina was saying that we have to change the space. We can't let the space change us. And the way that we remember is actually crucial to that endeavor of how we change the space or how the space changes us. So as I think about Chapel Hill and I wander around and thinking about Rabbi and tearing up all the sites and the things like that, it occurs to me that this is a hyper-contemporary story in that way. We're going to change. The world changes. Famously, Yehuda Amichai had a poem in which he said there were an 11th and 12th commandment from his father. The 11th commandment was, thou shalt not change. And the 12th commandment was, but you're going to change. If we give Amichai the last word on that, and we think about what it means to change and to grow into a collective future and how it is that we live our lives, do we change some of the places around us, or do we let them change us and bring them back? Do we chart a course that is of our highest values, or are we in ways confined and constrained by what's around us? The reality is it's probably something of both, but I appreciate Rabbi coming back around and offering us agency and saying, make good choices, make intentional choices, and be the holiest people you can be. Shabbat Shalom. Musaf service is on 155, page 155. Yikadal v'yikada shemei Rabba V'yalma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei V'chayechon u'vyomechon U'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael Ba'agala U'vizmahan kahari v'meru Amen Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach Olam ulol me'omaya yitbarach yishtabach v'par v'tramam v'naseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol berchata v'shihira hata tush bechata